Hello, my name is Jeremy Akers, Jeremy Nathaniel Akers, and I want to talk to you real briefly about the cutting edge of my thinking as it relates to liberating structures that came as a result of this event, Play Drive in Austria, a couple weeks ago. Play Drive. So much to say about Play Drive, probably better to not even start. Um, what I can say is that I was very much influenced by the thinking of nerds from WeCo, as well as block science, and especially these humans at the Economic Space Agency, or EXA, and their faction of XORG, or experimental organizations. Thinking through the frame of games are organizations and organizations are games was extraordinarily insightful and led to the following framework. Three things of significance: roles, scenes, and moves. So, roles are, these conglomerations of rights, privileges, and responsibilities that become an enabling constraint that sort of tell us what moves that we can make within a setting. And so the role of me, basically, in a context as a maestro minimalist in liberating structures, is I can propose moves within the context of a scene. And those moves have some responsibilities to enable participation, to include and unleash everyone. That's a sort of assumed load in the moves that I suggest. But what do I mean here by scene? Scene being some description of the environment that we operate in. So I've been doing the Wise Crowds design call for almost 2 years now, and the intake that I use to understand places is a description of place, the context that people are operating in, a description of purpose, the intended outcome or direction that we're working towards, a description of participants, the people who we need participation from in order to be successful toward our purpose, and some description of the particulars. Are we online? Are we offline? Meeting in person? Do we have an hour? Do we have several hours a day? Is this a one-time deal? Or are we meeting regularly in a specific cadence around these topics? This is the way that I understand the scene or the setting that I am designing a move in response to. So, with that information, we can slot this into this handy dandy thing, framework, idea, way of organizing stuff. So we take our scene, we plunk it there in the center, and then we think about a few different buckets of liberating structures in response to that scene. We think about the bucket of interaction patterns, ways in which we organize the interaction between people in order to include and unleash everyone. This is relatively low skill. You cannot do this shit wrong. Even if you try, you are a hero in my book. So, thinking about the interaction patterns is our sort of first layer that we want to either, think about the way that these things might rotate and that you sort of lock into place when you've landed on, this is a good structure in response to this setting. After we've got our sort of interaction patterns defined or a short list created or one locked in, we want to think about our invitations, our questions, our prompts, these invitations that drive the conversation in very different directions based on which invitation I pick. Invitations require a little bit more skill to sort of quote unquote select the right one, but if you just pick one, you will see how it goes, and you will have learned something from having done it, and you may know which invitation may be a better choice next, or maybe next time. So, first pick your interaction pattern, then think about which liberating structure you want to use for your invitation to guide the interaction in a specific direction. And last but not least, think about what artifacts you want to either use to organize your time, attention, and energy together, or create in order to export the thinking that you've done together into an asynchronous context to people in the wider community or stakeholder environment that were not present during the synchronous interaction in response to this setting. And maybe those are obviously people also separated in time. So how can I create something digestible and coherent that enables other people to get a piece of the thinking that we did, organized around this invitation, or in this way around this setting? So you can think of this move or this suggestion of a move that emerges or is populated by this scene in a couple different ways. You can think about it as pick one of these fucking things. These are pretty good things to pick in response to this stuff. So pick one and go for it, based whatever your skill level is. These are super easy, can't screw them up. This is maybe a little bit more dicey. This might have more moving parts associated with it since you're creating something that is by definition to be sort of interpreted or to absorbed by somebody at a later date. So pick one of these and have a good time. You can also think about it as, hey, maybe think about these things as a string of structures. First interact this way, then interact that way around in a particular invitation, and then, dump your thinking into that frame so that you've got yourself an artifact. So you can think about this as a string generator or, a move generator, looking at these structures linearly or going back and forth, whatever. And last but not least, for the most advanced practitioners, you might think about these things as particular amounts of inspiration. I'm going to do something kind of crazy that may not make sense to some people, but might make sense to others. If you think about each one of these are microstructures, but each of these microstructures has many different elements and sort of moving parts in here. And we can actually take these moving parts, and we can grab a part of this, and a part of that, and a part of this, and recombine them into novel ways that have never been used before. This is not an actual example that came from an actual scene, but I'm just going to sketch it out for you anyway. Impromptu networking uses a series of one-on-one conversations. Helping heuristics, invites us to use 4 heuristics to organize our conversations. So that might look like the first heuristic is, what is it actually? Jesus. Presence. So just engaging in, simple presence and, really listening to somebody in the first interaction. And then the second heuristic being guided discovery, using reflective listening and, simple questions to help tease out and gain clarification from that second conversation. And the third conversation, using loving provocation to maybe introduce some difference that might or might not be accepted quite so easily by our counterpart. So we can think about recombining those 3 elements in these one-on-one interactions, and then we might use the ecocycle to create the visual artifact that references these conversations, that helps us journal for our own personal benefit and think about the next step. What is the next right thing based on this set of conversations we've had? It's a random example, but I just want to show yet another way that you can think about recombining these things into novel ways that may have never been used before. So this is the way I think about, design and liberating structures and designing scenes. And this was a physical prototype I made out of the thing just so I could get a feel for how it actually looked and worked in physical reality. Super alpha, but hopefully you get the gist. I actually have a whole bunch of description of these scenes that I've gathered via the Wise Crowds design call that we've been doing for like the last 2 years. We have many different cases or scenes that we have documented in this very basic way of place, purpose, participants, and particulars. And we have lots of different recommendations or different moves that we have put together in response to that scene. So I look forward to encoding this information in a way that might be a little bit more easily digestible and plugging it into one of these GPT etc's and seeing if we can't, find some interesting patterns and, make use of some of this, machine intelligence to help us create good moves that make sense in response to our settings. So that's about it. My name's Jeremy Akers, Jeremy Nathaniel Akers. This, like I said, is super unfinished thinking, the cutting edge of my understanding of my work as a designer, of interaction, and let me know what you think. Thanks for your time, attention, and energy, and safe